And that's what reality is. It's going to be faster and easier for us to change federal law than it is for us to go and get certified with minor to moderate mental health issues.
Hi, everybody. My name is Joe LaRusso. I'm the Director of Aviation here at Ramos Law, where we have a lot of things involving aviation, from certificate defense to crash litigation. And fortunate enough, Zeke and myself get to dabble a little bit into the world of pilot mental health through a good friend of mine, Chris Finlinson, who's here today from Pilot Mental Health Campaign. Chris, how are you?
Doing great, Joe. Happy to be here.
And Chris, you're the executive director of PMHC. We'll just call it PMHC, easier for myself and I'm sure for the listeners and the viewers. So you're the executive director of PMHC. Tell us a little bit about it.
Absolutely. So we're the nation's first and foremost political advocacy organization looking to specifically change how mental health is treated in this country, especially when it comes to the FAA policies, FAA procedures, and the way that pilots are treated. We are the ones that are trying to go out to Washington, go out to Congress to go and share the stories of everyone who has suffered, everyone who has gone and actually tried to get certified, try to get treatment, try to do all these things, only to realize that if they're to do so, they'd have severe ramifications on their pilot certificate.
Yeah, that's so crazy. And before we dive into how you got involved in PMHC and what initiatives and efforts PMHC are putting in the legislative world, tell me a little bit about you. You're a professional pilot as well?
Absolutely, yeah. So I fly the A320 family for United Airlines out of Chicago. Before that, I was the regional chief pilot for Minneapolis for Endeavor Air. Flew a little bit of 135, 91, CFI, kind of a jack of all trade, kind of moving up the ranks of aviation. Unfortunately, right as I got on at United, I got hit with whatever COVID wave it was back in the winter of 2021. And that hit me with long COVID. I got the brain fog, memory loss, fatigue, the whole shebang, if you will. And thankfully, had pretty good occupational therapy. But it also triggered a bunch of anxiety, a bunch of depression, ended up having panic attacks. And I just remember sitting in my bed as I was trying to get through long COVID, thinking, I can't deal with this mental health stuff. I can't deal with this anxiety, the panic attacks. I need to go get help, even if I feel like I'm going to go and throw away my career to do it. And I remember walking into that doctor's office in February of 2022, thinking that I was throwing my career away. But thankfully, got on SSRIs, been on a stable dose of SSRIs now for a few years, and it's completely changed my life, completely changed my anxiety, depression, and it's amazing how treatable mental health is when you actually get the treatment. Been fighting with the FAA now for a few years, trying to cross all the T's, dot all the I's, and hopefully finally get to that point. My case is in Washington, D.C. now, and hope to hear good news soon.
And I can tell you, as a pilot myself, as you know, that is such a hard story to hear. And it is a story that is repeated over and over and over again in our industry. And I think you said it perfectly, that it is treatable. But to pilots, is it treatable? It really can't be treatable if it's not ever presented, right?
Exactly, and that's what we're seeing is the barriers to care are just astronomical. You have pilots that think that, if they get even basic care, even a little bit of care to go and get this treatment, they're grounded for forever, or they're grounded to the point where they're going to have to give up their career. The only reason I'm lucky to be here is because I have some of the best long-term disability in the world. If I was at a regional, if I was at CFI 135, any of these smaller companies I used to work for, I don't know what my employment, my career, any of this would look like right now. And thankfully, I have the backing of a very, very good employer, and I have the backing of a lot of good people around me. But if I was anywhere else in my career, I don't know what would have happened.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I'm sure there's a ton of pilots who unfortunately can't say that, right? And they are looking at, I mean, truth is what truth is, right? And facts are facts. They are looking at a significant break in their career, if not at times a barrier that is just it's impossible to overcome.
Well, that's what we're seeing right now. We just did a survey of our membership and blasted out kind of over our social media, our email list, all that stuff. And
Oh, interesting.
we got 114 respondents, and 71% of them waited until they were in a crisis to get help for their mental health,
Oh my God.
which is just a tragedy. It's a tragedy to think that they're waiting that long, all not because they're concerned about, again, if they're safe, they're waiting because they're afraid and don't know what's going to happen to them when they actually try to get certified with the FAA.
That's so sad. And it ripples as well, right? I mean,
Mhm.
it's, we always joke about it that pilots have a high divorce rate. Um, and I think, we always joke about one, that pilots are alcoholics, and two, pilots are always divorced, right? Those are the two big jokes. They've been on Saturday Night Live, right, for decades talking about it, skits of the drunk airline pilot. Um, but it's interesting now, especially with PMHC and this big push towards the mental health revolution and the change within the FAA. When you look back at those, it's it's at least in my perspective, it's like saying, hey, there was a mental health crisis. There always has been a mental health crisis. There was a mental health crisis back then. There's been a mental health crisis all the way through. And you see, unfortunately, that being made fun of, and that coming out in light of, well, pilots are alcoholics. Well, are they alcoholics because they're alcoholics? Or are they alcoholics because they have a mental health problem? And the only thing that they can do that the FAA is not initially critical of is drink, right?
Well, that's what I hope that the public knows as well, is that as pilots, we're professionals.
Sure.
When we go and step into the cockpit, when we sign for that airplane, when we sign that release, say we're fit for duty, we are fit for duty. We are self-assessing ourselves the way that we've been trained for all of our career for the thousands of hours that we go and fly our airplanes. That's why we're waiting, and it doesn't happen in the cockpit. It happens at home. We
Yeah.
can go and compartmentalize at the job. We could go and do our job very professionally. But then when we get home, that's when we have to take that emotional backpack off. That's when all of a sudden now I don't have the patience anymore to deal with my wife fighting, or I don't have the patience anymore to deal with a hot water heater blowing, and now I'm going to go and blow my gasket. I don't have the patience to go and deal with the kids' schedules or anything like that, and it all goes sideways, not on the job, but at home.
Right.
And that's why we're seeing, this being able to be swept under the rug for so long, is that we have a extremely professional group of individuals that fly airplanes, but they don't have the support then to go at home. They don't have the support then to have that well-rounded quality of life. And this is what happens. And that's why we get to these crisis points. We, in this survey, we, for the first time, actually asked people to go and write their responses. It wasn't just multiple choice. It was actually, tell us in your own words what's going on.
Oh, wow.
And there are so many people that basically said, my spouse forced me to do this. And
Wow.
thankfully they had the family support to say, look, you have to go do this now. Um, and again, that's I hate to say success story, but at least that's the good where people are able to come back from the void. People aren't always able to come back from the void, and that's the real tragedy that we're actually facing.
Yeah, that's so well put. So tell me, what is PMHC doing now? I know a couple of bills pushing through to the Senate. Talk to me about those.
Yeah, so this is one of those things that thankfully we have massive problem, right? And now we actually have a pretty good solution to the problem. So back in the end of 2023 and early 2024, there was an aviation rulemaking committee specifically formed to look at mental health policies within the FAA, make recommendations, and really find what the solutions are to these pretty big problems. They came up with 24 recommendations. The final report was released on April 1st of 2024. Absolutely amazing work. The problem is I've now said the word recommendation, I think, like 3 times. And
Right.
that's what they are. They're recommendations. They're things that they are trying to get the FAA to go and look at, but there's no binding authority behind the Aviation Rulemaking Committee to the FAA for the FAA to actually do what they need to do to reform this. So very easy. Again, problem, solution. We just don't have the accountability. And
Sure.
that's what we now have done, is gone to Congress, shared stories like these, gone and educated lawmakers on this pretty massive issue, and they all of a sudden realize what actually is going on. And because of that, we've been able to get just obscene success with the Mental Health and Aviation Act. We went and introduced that for the first time in September of 2024 in the 118th Congress, and we just passed it in September of 2025 in the 119th Congress.
Wow.
We lost in the election in between that. We lost one of our co-sponsors, and we had to go and do a couple different things, but we were able to get that bill passed in the House in less than a year by unanimous voice vote.
That's wild.
That's one
That's
of those
so crazy.
that's one of those things. It literally is lawmakers finally realizing that there is a problem, there is a solution, and they can actually do something about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I know going through back, I've been in this world now for a while, over a decade dealing with mental health and pilot advocacy. And the problem that I always faced was when talking to representatives and senators was, Joe, my constituents um, do not want a pilot with anxiety, do not want a pilot with depression. How am I supposed to bring it to them and say, hey, I'm trying to help this pilot with depression get back into the cockpit? How am I supposed to bring that to my constituents? I'm not going to get reelected if I try and advocate for that. Has that been a barrier that you guys have dealt with as well?
Thankfully, it's now flipped on its head. What
That's
we're
awesome.
realizing now, again, is that there are pilots flying with untreated anxiety, untreated depression, untreated very minor mental health issues, minor to moderate mental health issues. And to go and get them help and to make our airspace safer, we need to get them help. We
Yeah.
need to get them to be able to go and seek those treatments that are readily available, readily treatable for mental health, and to be able to actually go and make themselves safer. You know,
Right.
psychotherapy is a great example. It's the first recommendation of that aviation rulemaking committee is to make psychotherapy non-reportable to the FAA. And
Yeah.
there's reason for that because if pilots go and seek psychotherapy proactively, that's a good thing. That is them taking a proactive step to go and manage their health and not waiting to a crisis inflection point. And
Kind of
that's
akin to us. Oh, sorry. It's kind of akin to us, like going and seeing a dentist, right? Doing our yearly
exactly.
checkup, not reportable to the FAA. It's just part of natural care.
Well, heck, it's like going to the gym.
Sure.
I mean, I want to go and make sure my heart's ticking. I want to make sure my health's good. I'm going to
Yeah.
go run. I'm going to go lift weights. I'm going to do all those things. And it's all proactive and it's all in good health to make sure that I'm a safer pilot when I go and get into that cockpit.
Yeah. So what's in the bill?
Yeah, the bill right now, it's again pretty simple. Enact the 24 recommendations of the Aviation Rulemaking Committee. There's also money. It's 13.74 million a year for 3 years to ensure that we could go and recruit and train more aviation medical examiners, as
Amazing.
well as to specifically target mental health practitioners, so psychologists and psychiatrists. So you have a better literate workforce actually certifying the pilots in the AME office. We also have an annual review requirement. So right now there is a just standing policy at the FAA that they review specific conditions every 5 years. We think science moves a little bit faster than that, and we
Sure.
want that to be reviewed every year.
Yeah.
And then from that, we also have a 1.5 million a year for 3 year campaign to go and have the FAA actually communicate these changes to the pilot population to start to build that trust again, to start to get past all the jokes that we make about, oh, I can't ever be sad. So I'd be sad once, and the FAA is going to come at me. No, this is going to change. And the FAA is on board of trying to make that change and actually market that once it does happen.
Do you see a world where pilots and the FAA are coming back together and trying to be kind of a team? Because it's always just been like, are we up there because they're down here, or vice versa, right? It's always been a don't say anything to the FAA because they'll take you out of the sky the moment you say hello to them. And that's been a culture that's existed as long as I've been in aviation. And it's interesting that you put that aspect into the bill to try and unite and come together. What do you think? Is it possible?
It's going to have to. It's one of those things it's going to be a hard thing to do. It's going to be a hard hill to climb. But if we want a safer airspace system, it has to happen. There
Sure.
has to be proactive steps to go and ensure that pilots can be open and honest about the things that they're dealing with, as well as the FAA needs to be open and honest about what they need to get certified and ensure the things they need to get certified are based on current science, based on current practice, and not something from DSM-3 when we're on DSM-5.
Right. Yeah, 100%. Now, I know Mental Health and Aviation Act has gotten um, a ton of publicity and a ton of focus, but there's a second act, is there not?
There's the Aviation Medication Transparency Act, which is
Yeah,
even more
talk to
fun
us
to
about
say.
that.
That's again common sense solutions. So right now we have buried in a 800 plus PDF written for doctors called the AME guide, the Aviation or Aeromedical Examiner guide. And in that, if you sift through it, you can finally find what medications that you can and can't take, kind of.
Sure.
What we want the FAA to do is just publish that list. Publish the list of what medications we can take, what we can't take or what we can and can't take. So that way we could readily access that when we're in our doctor's office. So that way we could go make medical decisions with our doctors to know that, okay, medication A might be good, but medication B might not be good.
Yeah.
So I don't want to go in my doctor's office, have something like high cholesterol, which is, not that big of an issue. If it's treated, I get medication A and that's fine. But if I got medication B, all of a sudden now I could potentially be grounded. I could potentially have to go through this whole bureaucratic process when if I just had the information with my doctor, I could have gone A instead of B.
Yeah. I tell this
And
story all the time. I once got called by a pilot who was in pre-surgery in the ready room, and the anesthesiologist was talking about the medications that that he was going to give this pilot to put him under. And the pilot literally called me and said, "Joe, can I have these?" And the answer had to be at the time, "I don't know. I don't know. We can check the forums." Right? There's a bunch of pilot forums of pilots who have said, "I've gotten through with this medication." Other pilots who say, "I haven't gotten through with this one. This one's on the no list." So we kind of in the industry have maintained what we believe to be a blacklist, but this is kind of the FAA's got to tell their blacklist, right? They got to put it on the table and say what medication they absolutely will not accept, but also why, right?
well, that's the thing is that we just got in the spring of 2024 an amazing resource of over-the-counter medications.
Right.
Absolutely amazing resource. Now we have a clear guidance on what I can't take, what I can take, if I do take it, how long I have to go and ground myself for, and then why.
Yes.
It's absolutely an amazing resource. We just want that instead of just over the counter for a prescription medication. Nice and easy. I want to be able to walk in my doctor's office, say I have X condition, which is going to be treated with Y medication, and
Yeah.
then know, leaving out there that I'm going to be treated healthy, safe on this medication to go and do my job.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the why is big as well because the regs say that it's up to the federal air surgeon. Like ultimately, blacklists and objective standards are fine, but the discretion is at the federal air surgeon, right? So the discretion suggests at least that hey, we may believe this medication to be bad for this reason, this reason, this reason. However, if you can subjectively show that your body chemistry does not react that way, perhaps there's an opening for that medication. I think that's important as well. So that why, not only blacklisting, but why you blacklisted it. Because if I believe that my body is not experiencing those symptoms, that I should be able to at least seek reconsideration from the federal air surgeon per the regs.
Absolutely. And again, you see that with physical and mental conditions as well.
Sure.
There might be, symptoms, there might be ramifications based off of whatever diagnosis. But if I'm already going to go through a COG screen, a psychiatrist evaluation, going to a normal psychiatrist for 3 months, I mean, I forget how many doctors I've been in front of now for generalized anxiety disorder, and I still can't fly an airplane.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah. Right. At what point in time? What's the magic combination? Yeah, that's crazy. Progressing with both bills now, and I know this is the full crystal ball shake, right? Progressing with both bills, what do we think the path is?
The path now leads to the United States Senate. If you watch items to bill, that's where we're at. So we've gotten past the U.S. House. Now we're going to the U.S. Senate. We're going to go and do it all over again. Thankfully, what we've done this summer, knowing how much momentum we've had, we've already been talking with many senators. We've been talking to a lot of senators on the Commerce Committee, which is the committee of jurisdiction in the Senate. And we've done a lot of background work. So that way, once they're introduced to the Senate, a lot of that negotiation has already been done. A lot of discussions already have been done. And we're hopeful that then we're going to see even faster progression in the Senate once we do get it introduced.
That's awesome. What do you think timeline? I know everybody's going to want to know.
Yeah, if I could predict when the government was going to reopen, it'd be a lot easier. That's really the big thing that's holding us now. Unfortunately, we have to figure out how to fund the government first, and then once you move into that, then we're going to be able to go and look at bills like these to be able to go and actually make the change that we need to make.
Gotcha. Do you think it's government shutdown aside, which is unbelievably frustrating? I know from your perspective, certainly. Also from ours, I can't tell you how many pilots are calling saying, "Hey, what's happening with my medical review?" And we're saying, "Well, there's really no one reviewing it." So it's definitely a difficult time right now for everybody having to deal with anything with the federal government. Let's say federal government opens up tomorrow. realistically, can we see it like June, July next year? What are we thinking?
No, we're thinking immediately.
Oh, wow.
Once the government reopens, we're pretty much ready, set to go to hit the ground running in the United States Senate.
That's
So
amazing.
we're looking forward to that opportunity, to say the least.
You guys are so impressive in such a short timeline to go from recognizing the problem to taking it all the way through the House, not once, but twice, right? You mentioned 118th, 119th, now pushing to the Senate. That's incredibly impressive. What do you, it kind of feels like this is just like the momentum is just building and we just finally boiled over and now it's just go, 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 go.
That really is what it is. There's the dam is breaking.
Right.
And as the dam breaks, it's been easy to go and say, "No, this isn't going to happen. This isn't going to happen." But now, as we go and have seen some very public issues when it comes to this, when we be
Yeah.
able to share the stories to the people that can hold the FAA accountable, also now again, it's pilots are sick of it. I mean, it's
Sure.
a joke. It's a joke to us, but at the same time, it's a joke because it has to be. Because otherwise,
Yes.
we just get so unbelievably frustrated that we can't access basic care. And
Yeah.
now it's just the point where nobody wants to be quiet about it anymore. And that's again, we've seen so many organizations join us, so many organizations follow our lead to go and say, now is the time to get this done. And that's again, we have problem, we have a solution, we just need the accountability.
That's it. Do you think was there a turning point, do you think? Anything like that triggered it, or do you think it's just built up?
I would say, unfortunately, again, FAA policy is written in tragedy. I think the tragedy of the Alaska Airlines incident back in the fall of 2023, where
Yeah.
it's somebody unfortunately go and have undiagnosed, substance abuse, trying to self-medicate, ended up being in the cockpit when they shouldn't have been, and had a bad incident that could have led to, some pretty bad things. That really forced us to look in the mirror and say, what are we actually doing?
Right.
That's a pretty big canary in the coal mine of what actually is happening here. And that's why we saw the NTSB hold a safety summit in the December of 2023. That's why we saw the Aviation Rulemaking Committee come out of that. And now it's just the fact that there is this momentum and the industry is not letting up. The industry is saying, no, we can't have this. We cannot have pilots suffer to the point where they're going to get to that pilot that was in that cockpit that day. We cannot wait till it's this crisis. We need to get it treated now.
What do you see with the interplay between the FAA and the NTSB? I laugh a little bit. After that incident happened, after the T handle incident happened, we had the FAA coming up with their recommendations, right? With putting together the ARC, notifying the ARC in November, and then you had the NTSB also doing their roundtable, right? They did an aviation mental health safety roundtable, and what's interesting is. And I bring this up all the time talking to industry professionals is the FAA announced their ARC on November 5th. The NTSB announced their roundtable on November 5th. And then the NTSB came out again and announced, well, we actually thought about it earlier. We actually thought about it in October. and it always kind of seems like they're competing a little bit to Congress saying, well, we care more. We're doing more. We care more. And in the past, that's always been kind of a problem with a push and shove relationship. And I can say personally, with my career, I've dealt a lot with the evolution of mental health from just a hard no to the involvement of the HIMSS program, and then moving forward. And that relationship, the HIMSS program development, was a lot of the NTSB and the FAA fighting to Congress. And the NTSB saying the FAA needs to do more, and the FAA goes, "We're doing more." And then next thing you know, we have something that we didn't anticipate or want in the industry. Do you find that at all with the NTSB and the FAA's interplay with Congress, or are we generally aligned? Is it a good thing?
Well, that's what I think the NTSB gets to say the hard things out loud.
Yeah,
Since they're the ones who are going to go and actually look at what happens in tragedies.
sure.
They're the ones that are able to actually go out and say, look, this is what needs to change because otherwise XYZ is going to happen. The FAA then has to go and try to look at that. And I do credit the FAA right now of trying very hard to change some of the stuff and trying to go and actually work with the industry. That being said, there isn't the urgency and there isn't the push and resources behind that goodwill of the FAA to get things actually accomplished yet. And that's what we're trying to change again through legislative action, through industry action, and just culture change.
Yeah. And I think that's important to, for the pilot community to hear, because I know a lot. I mean, let's call a spade a spade. This podcast is going to be listened to a lot by pilots, and I think that's important for them to hear that you do believe the FAA is in the right space working. They may not be with the urgency that the pilot corps wants or that the industry wants, but they're receptive, right? And they're not turning a blind eye to it, saying, "Nah, we're not going to deal with that right now."
And again, there's goodwill credit trying to be done. It is a massive agency that then I think you need those outliers to go and get them out of comfort space, right? We all need those outliers to get us out of comfort space every now and again. And that's what everybody's, I think, trying to do. I think that's what the NTSB is trying to do. That's what we're trying to do. It's easy for us to go and paint us as, the white knights and they're the evil dragon we have to slay.
Sure.
But that's not reality. This isn't a fairy tale. This is one of those things where, yeah, there's good people everywhere, good people trying to go and make change. It may not be at the speed. We may have to push, we may have to shove, we may have to compromise, but at the same time, everybody is trying to go at least get in the right direction.
Oh, it's so powerful. And not to add another reason, to keep piling on of why we need this change, but I will add another reason of why we need this change. We're dealing with, at least in our world of crash litigation, unfortunately, we're seeing more and more crashes. And recently, at the time of filming right now of this podcast, we just had the UPS crash. What are your thoughts on that? As the NTSB learns more about it, as the FAA learns more about it, is there any influence on that, any correlation between that and BMHC?
Absolutely, because we represent everybody that needs a medical certificate to operate their job safely. So that includes air traffic controllers. Air traffic controllers have to go through quite a bit of the same, if not sometimes more, if not sometimes less, but pretty much the same rigor that pilots have to go through.
Sure.
And I saw that incident. I saw, just again from my screen watching it, and how traumatizing that was for me. I can't imagine being one of those air traffic controllers, showing up to work during the longest shutdown of our government's history, not getting a paycheck, probably skipping a second paycheck now, already stressed, already worried about how they're going to put money, put dinner on the table that night, and then have to watch that tragedy, to have to watch that massive loss of life right in front of them on the job, and then to go home and they don't have the resources to manage that. They don't have
Right.
the access to the mental health care to go and manage that. And it's just unspeakable. It's inhumane to
Absolutely.
have people go through that without any help, all because of archaic policies that can't change. And it's unacceptable. And it's something that we need to move on this now, which that's why we've called several times for the government to reopen. We've called several times to go and get this legislation passed. We need the government open. We need the Senate here. We need the Senate to actually enact real reform, because once we do that, we're off to the races. We can start actually fixing the problem.
Absolutely. And that's such a tragic event. Our hearts go out to everybody that was involved in that. And I think, in your description of it, I think it's important for people to realize right now that notwithstanding that event, what ATC is going through right now with the shutdown, I mean, the stress level is brutal as it is, right? Understaffed. They got a system that's crumbling, that even just their actual physical components, the machines, the mechanisms to control airplanes are so antiquated and so ancient that they're having to constantly band-aid and deal with that while they're understaffed, now while they're not getting paid. And there's no way to vent that, right? There's no way to go talk to a therapist. There's no way to go talk to a counselor without having your certificate looked at.
Mm-hmm. And it's a tragedy.
It's unbelievable.
What it is. And that's why you see professionals wait to a crisis point, right?
Sure.
Because they have to. Because silence on these issues is just so much easier. Even if it's eating you away on the inside, it's easier to remain silent. And
Sure.
God only hope that we go and make sure that we pull everybody back from the void.
Now, I know there's going to be a lot of people that are listening that say, just go and get it. right? Just go and get that treatment, and don't tell the FAA at all. Just like, I don't understand why people aren't just doing that, right? What do you have to say to those people?
Well, it's the same problem, right? We have people either that are avoiding treatment, we have people then get treatment that then doesn't have proper oversight, and then
Hmm.
we have people that then self-medicate.
Sure.
And all of them are wrong in their own right. And
Yep.
and that's the problem is there's such a catch-22 of what are you supposed to do? You're supposed to get treatment, risk it, and then be punished essentially for telling the truth. You're supposed to get treatment and then not tell anybody about it and then commit a felony. Or
Right.
do you go and try to self-medicate? And then again, we joke back to the alcoholic pilot, the divorced pilot, all of that kind of stuff. And am I just going to go tank my family life all because I can't go to therapy? And it's an impossible situation to be in, all while you're trying to manage proper mental health, all while you're trying to ensure that again, you're just that little bit better when you get to the cockpit that day. And
Exactly.
it's a travesty.
Yeah, I think that's an important point that you said. It is a felony to defraud the government on that form. I don't think people realize that yeah, you could go get the treatment, but when you mark no on the form, right, on the 8500 on that application for a medical, you mark no, you're instantly facing 3 years in jail and a fine of $250,000 or more. And I don't think the public fully understands that. It is a true felony. It's defrauding the government.
And that's the thing is that we're looking at this where then how do we go and fix this moving forward? How do we go and
Sure.
create something where there is amnesty or there is a better process for pilots to get into to go and show that, look, like, I just want help. I have mild to moderate issues. I'm not out there, having very severe issues that are a safety issue. I just mild to moderate issues. I want to get treatment. I want to be able to go and do the thing that literally everybody else can do, be
Right.
healthier, and go and do my job at a better position.
Right.
And we can't do that.
No, I know people are going to be listening as well, and they're going to say, I'm on board. I love it. I love what you guys are doing. I love the bills that you're pushing forward. I agree with the help to pilots and air traffic controllers. So tell us about PMHC. What is how can somebody help? How can somebody get on this incredibly successful, powerful, and motivating team?
Well, that's what we are right now is we're completely grassroots. So literally every penny we get goes into advocacy, education, events, all of those things to go and change this culture and bring awareness to this problem. And that's the biggest thing that we need help with right now. If you go to pmhc.org/donate, we're trying to raise $75,000 by the end of the year. We're trying to go and be able to take this fight to the Senate. We're trying to go again get that magical 51 number to get this thing actually signed by the president and start actually going for the real change we need. In order to do that, we just need the resources, and that's the best thing you can do. If you want to go beyond that, we also have the volunteer link on our website. Help us come and get engaged. We need people to be involved. We need people to do projects. We need people to go and move this forward as we get more and more momentum. And that's absolutely the best thing that people can do right now.
That's big. And I know that so many people get, donate to this cause and donate to this cause. And especially in the pilot world, there's so many scholarships and, donate to put an airplane here and donate for this. And I know I get inundated with them in my inbox as a pilot. I'm sure you do as well. And I'm sure all the pilots listening does as well. Um, I, I think that the message needs to be strong here that you guys have done something that I have not seen another group do in my years of aviation. That you have taken a problem and in a very short time you have taken that initiative and taken that donation money and taken that drive and that passion of pilots and you have turned it into real legislation that is on the verge of becoming law. That is crazy.
And so just to again conceptualize how crazy this is. So we're going to look at the fact that we have formed an organization. We have found politicians to get behind the organization. We have found politicians to write legislation. We have gotten that legislation put onto the floor of the United States House of Representatives and passed unanimously, all faster than it would take a pilot to get certified with any sort of mental health issue.
That's unreal.
And that's what reality is. It's going to be faster and easier for us to change federal law than it is for us to go and get certified with minor to moderate mental health issues.
That's unbelievable. That's such, I mean, that puts that into a crazy perspective for the public. The old, if you're so mad at it, why don't you go change it? That's happening, and that's literally a shorter time for a pilot to get back in the air who is dealing with depression.
And that's what it is. This is that momentum that we've been talking about. It's
Wow.
the fact that we are angry. We are angry that we cannot do this. And finally, there is a force behind it. Finally, there is an opportunity for us to go and do something about it. And we are able to just pound the rock to get that done. And we are the ones leading that charge. We're the ones that, again, are working with everybody to make sure that this is going to be law. And it will
Wow.
be law if we get people to come and join us and to get on board and come be a part of something that is monumentally special in our industry.
Sure. I gotta ask, on behalf of all pilots, what's next when you get this into law? I mean, you guys are such a powerful organization and such a successful group of individuals that are so talented, knowledgeable, driven. Is there something else? Are you guys looking, once you get this law, where do we go?
There's a lot of that being talked about right now, or a lot about how now that we've seen an industry really coalesce around this idea of what can we and can't we do. I think there are a lot of problems. I think there are a lot of conditions out there that still need to be helped out with that do affect our mental health. I think there's a lot that we get with the FAA if we get the process kind of, a little bit more streamlined. That I also think that we need the people in the FAA to be able to do it. Right now, they're grossly understaffed and grossly underpaid for where they are as medical professionals. And we should take a look at what that is. We should take a look at, again, in the current day and age, what's the funding look like for the FAA? Is this mandatory? Is this discretionary? What is this? What are we actually doing? And there are a lot of opportunities behind this to go and say, okay, what is next? What do we want to do? Because it's going to be a problem today, and it's going to be a problem the day after the MHA passes, and we're going to continue to kind of, again, we're not going away at this point. The industry is going to be talking about mental health now, tomorrow, and into the future.
Absolutely. And I think you hit the nail on the head. There's so many different things that come into that, right? That people wouldn't associate with directly mental health. There's so many other conditions that kind of splinter off of that the work is far from done when this passes and the Transparency Act passes. The work is just beginning at that point in time. Now it's target after target after target, it sounds like.
Because really, that's my drive. I don't want a pilot to ever walk into the doctor's office and feel the way I did when I walked into a doctor's office in February of 2022. That is my drive. I have that imprinted into my brain of what I thought I was doing, all the sacrifices I made, and all of the lower tier jobs, sleeping 3 people to a hotel room in Jasper, Texas, just to try to save a couple bucks. All that sacrifice that we make as pilots to move up in this career, and to go and think that I was throwing all that sacrifice away all because I was too weak to deal with a mental health issue. No, of course not. Nobody's too weak to deal with a mental health issue. We go and get treatment because we need treatment.
Yeah.
And that's what we need. That's what we do not need pilots going and worrying about basic care.
Yes. I got to ask, man, I'm sure there's people thinking this. The amount of stuff that you've been through and the amount of stuff that really any pilot has been through, but you specifically have been through in your fight. Why don't you go be a postman? Right? You know what I mean? Why don't you go do anything else? What keeps you in it? What keeps that drive?
I don't like losing.
There you go. All right. I'm with you on that one.
It's not that I like winning, it's that I do not like losing. And I will not let anybody go and tell me that I'm not safe to fly an airplane when I have worked for years and thousands of hours and created a professional experience level to go and know that I can operate safely, I can operate efficiently, and frankly, operate better than I probably ever have, all because I've gotten this treatment.
Yeah.
I will not accept that is a bad thing.
Yeah,
I will
good
not
for you.
accept the fact that we have that right now in our industry.
I always say to people, and I get ridiculed from those in my life that are not pilots, but I always say to people that being a pilot is an identity. right? Like, you know, every pilot in the bar because they're going to tell you that they're a pilot, right? Every pilot in the room because they're going to tell you that they're a pilot. And the old joke, one of the guys I fly with, he tells the joke all the time. He says, all right, enough talking about me. Let's talk about flying. What do you think about that?
How many jobs are there out there really where you go to work every day and say, I've wanted to do this since I was a kid?
Right.
Like I once saw this cool thing. I once went to this grass strip. I saw this fighter jet. I saw this old World War II warbird with my grandpa. I saw X, Y, and Z, and I was hooked.
Yeah.
And I worked for my entire life to get to a position. And I don't see that. That's a rare passion these days, I think.
Yes.
And as much as we like to joke that airline pilots are just crusty old guys that aren't in it for the joy of flight anymore, but man, I tell you, the thing that I fantasize about the most is how it's going to feel when I hear the B1 call.
Oh, yeah.
And because I know that no matter what, we're going flying.
That's so
And
awesome.
that's I cannot wait for that moment in time.
What was it for you? What was the moment?
It was my dad. We
Wow.
always grew up again going to all the air shows, grew up making models, grew up kind of with the history behind aviation, and it just again hooked. Going to the air shows, seeing the warbirds, seeing modern aviation, seeing all
Yeah.
of the again just the massive industry of how you could have this amazing piece of machinery literally take off and fly halfway around the world, and how that
Yeah.
is normal. And
That's
just to
awesome.
go and be able to manage that machine, imagine that system, and to be able just to slide it onto the runway, into Denver, just to be able to go and slide it on, and it's a thing.
That's amazing. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Your dad was a pilot as well?
No, he wasn't. He was just a airplane nerd. And again, I was the first one of my family that did go into aviation, kind of do this as a professional career.
That's how it was with me too. Yeah, my dad was a long time listener, first time caller. Never flew. He soloed in college back when that was a thing, but never got his license. And the bug was infectious. I got it from him as well. So I love that. Um, I gotta ask. Leave off on kind of a funny note. Um, what is one aviation myth that you would like to debunk? I always, and I'll tell you before you answer. So I'm sure the commenters are going to say something on this too. My famous line that everybody has given me stuff for over the years is that I said that aviation is defying physics. And I still stand by that because NASA and the FAA still disagree of how a wing works, right? Like we got the rolling ball theory, we got Bernoulli's principle, we got high-low pressure. It's still magic. I still think we're defying physics and it's 100% magic. So that's my myth that I always say that I'm working towards debunking. What about you? What do you got?
I think everybody always asks me like, what's the scariest thing or what's the most intense thing that I see on my job? And I tell you, we work so hard to make this such a boring job that honestly, the scariest thing that's ever happened to me is I got a spider once on my hand as I was flying and freaked out because also there's a spider on me. And that's the honest to God truth of, we have such a great system in place that the scariest thing I deal with is a spider. So,
That's awesome.
as long as you don't have arachnophobia, you're fine. It's gonna
There
be
you go. That's it.
you're fine. It's all right.
Chris, you and your team are amazing. You guys have done just an unbelievably impressive job with PMHC and putting these two acts together. And not that I'm gonna speak for the entire industry in most cases, but I will now. And I can tell you on behalf of the entire industry and all the pilots, what you have done is unbelievable. And it's an amazing thing for the pilot corps. And I can tell you, like I'm even like it's emotional to talk about just the fact that this is happening. This change is happening. Pilots can finally be human beings. They can finally get help. We're no longer living in shadows. We can finally give that service to the public that they deserve, that they expect, that they trust of us to give. Um, you guys are amazing people. Thank you so much for this, and I hope all the listeners really take this podcast in, really listen to the message that we've been talking about and that you've been saying, and do anything you can to keep this momentum going, because we're right here. We're on the precipice. This is
I tell you,
it.
we're on the finish line, and I don't want anybody listening to this. I don't want anybody out there to think that they can't enact change, because this literally is that. It is a group of individuals that are insanely passionate, that have a personal connection to this issue, that have all decided that this is how they want to spend their free time, and this is what they want to do, and going out and executing on that. And it's nothing more than a scrappy startup that gets moving, and all of a sudden you're going to be able to do great things. So come join us, come join us in the fight, and really, really appreciative of everybody else in the industry that have had our backs as we've gotten rolling.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you.